talkSPORT cricket here at the Ranchi International Stadium. England have lost the fourth test by 5 wickets and lost the series 3-1 with 1 to play in Dharamshala. I'm joined as ever by the Telegraph's Will Macpherson. A bit of a sombre feel around the end of this fixture.
Yeah, England have their chances, and they actually gave themselves a look on day 4 as well, but just couldn't quite get over the line. They had too much to do. India returned only needing 152, and 152 is not a massive chase even on a pitch which was doing a bit like that one. So it's a question of what if for England. You know, they just if you told me after when we arrived in Hyderabad that England would be 3-1 down after 4, I wouldn't have been remotely surprised. But I think if you told me the circumstances in which they'd lost in Rajkot, where they had a very promising position and threw it away, and Ranchi, where they had a genuinely dominant position and threw it away, it would be really disappointing. And that's the general feel, I think.
It's one of the kind of contradictions of when you listen to Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum talking after a loss, is that yes, every single fixture has had England's moments where they've had a chance to win, and winning any test match out here is such an achievement, as Stokes said ahead of the series. But there is that kind of massive what if kind of question mark that surrounds this now. There was a chance, we were 24 hours away from having one of the most historic test series in history had England converted this match that was there for the win. To remind people of where the match was about a couple of days ago, India were 170 runs behind on the first innings with only 3 wickets left in hand. And so the fact they've managed to turn this fixture around makes it a phenomenal victory from India's point of view, and all the more frustrating from England's point of view that, yes, India are kind of a difficult team to beat, and yes, they were unbeaten here in over a decade, but England have had their chances, and they had another chance in the 4th innings here when Shoaib Bashir went 2-2. An unbelievable performance by him, 8 wickets for the match. I think I've just looked up, he bowled about 70 overs in this fixture. He arrived in the series having bowled 200 in his first-class career. What a performance.
Fantastic, and what a story. He... I think it was generally accepted at the time, but when he was selected, he was probably the most left field English selection this century. I genuinely think he was, and he took 4 wickets in a very solid performance on his first test, then was left out in Rajkot, and it came and took 8 here, including a maiden 5 for first 5 for in first class cricket, first 5 for in professional cricket. He now has more test wickets than non-test first class wickets. He's got more wickets for England than Somerset. Which is amazing. He seems a really kind of strong chipper lad, and I can see why England have kind of taken to him straight away. Him and Tom Hartley in this game were pretty heroic. They did everything that you could possibly be expected of them. They were, in that 3rd innings, I would say they were probably shown up a bit by Ashwin, Jadeja and Kuldeep, but they are all really experienced cricketers who are experts, some of the best ever. Ashwin is the wicketiest ever bowler in India. And the other 2 are damn good as well. So the pitch did look different when they were bowling in the 3rd innings, but I could not have asked for anything more from Bashir and Hartley.
I think if you want a snapshot of the kind of difference in class of the 2 teams, and that's no disrespect to Bashir and Hartley, it was when India opened the bowling with spin, it was Ashwin and Jadeja. When England did it, it was Tom Hartley and Joe Root, and that is a big difference. I think a big question that kind of looking forward, not just to next week, but to the summer, is what do England do with these guys now? So Shoaib Bashir will be behind Jack Leach, if Jack Leach is fit for the season. Tom Hartley is at Lancashire, and they've signed Nathan Lyon for the entirety of the domestic season as an overseas player. We're going to, imagine, speak to kind of Brendan McCullum, and that'll be something that's kind of spoken about, is what role do England play? What role can England play in trying to get these guys more experience? Because they're going to want one of these guys potentially, probably not both of them, for England's test summer.
Yeah, I actually still think, I've certainly felt going into this game that Leach would still be England's first choice spinner going this summer, but I think Bashir's performance here slightly made me rethink that. It's possible that if he plays well in Dharamshala, he could usurp him, but I doubt it. And you're right, we have got a massive problem in that. And the same is true of Rayan Ahmed, of course, as well, who will be the first choice spinner at Leicestershire, which is not something Bashir and Hartley will be at their counties, but he's still going to struggle for opportunities. He's essentially going to play for Leicester as a batsman. Bashir and Hartley, it's easy to say, I'll get them loans, but they won't get loans because every county has someone who can bowl spin. They just choose not to pick them because conditions don't dictate. England have obviously shown a lack of interest in the county championship when choosing their spinners. If they went on the county championship, they would have just gone straight to Liam Dawson, and they chose not to. They thought that the other two, Bashir and Hartley, would perform better. And I think, to be honest, it's hard to say, but I couldn't say with any confidence that Dawson would have done any better here. I think they've been that good. But yeah, they're not going to get a game when they go back to their counties, and that's a really real worry. Even if Tom Hartley's able to prove he could bat 7 for Lancashire, you're still comparing him against a fourth seamer, and I'm not sure you would pick a second spinner over a fourth seamer.
It's one of the things that obviously Rehan Ahmed has that advantage going for him moving forward in his career, that he's hopefully going to be an out-and-out all-rounder, so he can almost be a second spinner in his side if England wanted that luxury. But in Jack Leach hasn't been the kind of this. I know he has the 92 against Ireland, but his primary skill set has been as a spinner. He's kind of been a one-dimensional cricketer, to use a cruel phrase, and that would work in the kind of Bashir and Hartley's favour, Bashir's in particular. Looking forward to Dharamshala. This is the first series that Stokes and McCullum have lost in the Bazball era. Of course, when speaking to Stokes after play, he goes, well, we don't really think about it that way. Like, every test match is an opportunity, X, Y, Z. I do wonder, A, if there'll be any kind of new challenges for McCullum and Stokes to motivate a group of players who I think will be very, very, very disappointed and frustrated to have lost the series here. That was there, not for the taking, but there with an opportunity to win. And B, whether England might see next week's test as a kind of one-off opportunity to mix and match, to see Dan Lawrence for a test match, to potentially have a look at Gus Atkinson before the test summer. Is it too early to kind of ponder and wonder whether England might rest and rotate in a week's time?
No. One thing I would say is that the World Test Championship was brought in to avoid... One of the reasons it was brought in was to bring in context and avoid dead rubbers. But actually, England, because of the ludicrous point sanctions they got last summer for a slow over rate in comparison to Australia, who didn't get them, basically because England batted quicker. England are actually essentially already out of a running to get into the World Test Championship final next year. So they're not going to think about that. I don't think they're big fans of it anyway. I don't think they're that bothered, but they're not going to have that as a thing to hang their hat on and say, oh, well, let's push for those points next week. I think England are obviously going to take it dead seriously as a test match, but I actually think it will be continuity. I think there could potentially be a bit of sentimentality that comes into it. You mentioned Dan Lawrence. Well, the person who you might think he could come in for possibly would be Johnny Bairstow, but he's playing his 100th test. Who knows whether he'd ever get that opportunity again. I don't know whether that will come into it, but I have a funny feeling it might. And then Atkinson, I don't think he's looked that close to a debut on this tour. I would posit this question. I wonder whether England might call up another seamer, because Ollie Robinson looked miles off the pace here.
Sure.
Jimmy Anderson, I don't need to remind anyone of his age. He's not getting any younger, and he needs looking after, and he spent some time off the field with a quad injury today. I think he is fundamentally fine, but... he's not the youngest. I wonder whether they might call up Matthew Potts, because the word is we've been hearing about this all tour, but Dharamshala remains really cold. The days are going to be short. It's going to be like Durham in April.
Can't wait.
Maybe Durham in March actually. So I wonder if they might end up having to go 3 seamers and drop one of these 2 spinners who's played so well here.
It does seem like probably the only location in India where Ben Stokes would break the rule that he made going into the series. He said India is 1 seamer or 2, never 3. And unless he wants to buy, it goes back to the risk-reward thing. I know in theory it's not a dead rubber, but I think now that slight edge of being able to win the series has been taken off the fixture. Do you want to risk Jimmy Anderson if he's got a slightly tight quad? Is Ollie Robinson going to be fit enough to go again after what has been a pretty curious test match, to borrow I think the word you used earlier? And then... in Ben Stokes, he's probably going, well, if the series isn't on the line, I don't know if I want to put my body on the line. And that leaves you solely with Mark Wood and Gus Atkinson. And if you want a third teamer, that would have to come in the shape of Matthew Potts. That's quite enough from us today. We'll be back with you next week with all the more cricket content on the YouTube talkSPORT cricket channel. I think I got those words in the wrong order, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's fine. We're also going to be on the following on podcast. We'll have every single ball of the final test live for you on talkSPORT 2, and make sure you tune in then.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.